So tonight's agenda, the topics I'm going to cover for you, I'm going to give you a little bit about my journey in terms of where I've been and where I've gone through and the long journey I've been through my career, which hopefully gives you a bit of insight into what you have to do once you embark on yours. I want to talk about why BIM, and then I want to talk about your journey and how you can commence your journey. And the positive is you're starting it by being here tonight, so that's a really huge win for you. Okay. So if anyone's ever seen a presentation of mine over the last 4 or 5 years, you would have seen this slide and it would have been slightly different. Instead of just having journey written here, it would have had BIM journey sitting in here. Now, for me, I've had an interesting journey. So I'm a trained architect. I studied architecture here at QUT. It was second year architecture, I believe, in the second semester, where I had a tutor say to me, "Nathan, your hand drawings are absolutely atrocious. You need to find a different way from which you present your ideas." Okay, so in the traditional sense, an architect talks with their eyes, or they explain their ideas by using their hand drawings. So I was a reasonable enough architect, but I just couldn't draw for shit. Okay, so I went away and thought to myself, okay, so how am I going to do this? And I had a friend that worked at a major architectural practice here in Brisbane, and he's gone, "Oh, we use this software here." And I said, okay, well, let's have a go at that. So got my hands on this piece of software called ArchiCAD. And back in 2002 or 2001, I think it was, I started using that tool. So I started using that tool to present my ideas for my architecture degree because I couldn't draw. So that's what got me through university. Now, because the course was slightly different here at QUT when I went through university, you guys probably complain about how much study you have to do now. It's kind of ironic. In the first part of my course, you did a 3-year full-time course, and then you did a 3-year full-time course again. But the structure of the course was set up so that you do 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on one day a week and 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on another night. So the idea is that you would work in practice in industry for 4 days a week. So I started at Fulton Trotter Architects as a 4th-year student. At the time, it was 3 years for both courses. And we were an AutoCAD practice. So I was going backwards from using ArchiCAD as a startup 3rd-year student, going into Fulton Trotter using AutoCAD. At the time, I still had to do some hand drawings as well, and I thankfully never kept those. But our practice in 2000, at the end of 2000 or mid-2004, transitioned away from AutoCAD into ArchiCAD. Now, me as a 5th-year student, I had actually had the most experience in using that tool in the practice at the time. So automatically, what did that mean for me? All right, you're the CAD manager. So as a 5th-year student within a practice at the time, there was probably about 40 staff. It was my responsibility for controlling the quality of the documentation across our whole practice. So as a 5th-year student. So this kind of leads you into kind of a sense of where I started and how I started early, okay? Now, a few years ago at a Built conference, this was actually RTC at the time, I was lucky enough to see a presentation from this guy called Dave Randall. Now, you can find this guy on YouTube. He's a very motivational speaker. And if you ever find at any time that you are, I guess, you feel abnormal or you feel that you don't fit in, I want you to have a think about some of these slides that I've taken from his presentation that kind of make you start to understand the importance of how you can fit in, okay? Now, the interesting thing about this is that I always look at this slide and I always think to myself is that strong people have strong weaknesses too, right? And where there are peaks, there are always valleys. So you think about that. If you have a weakness, that you know that you have a weakness, there's another side where you have a strength, okay? So a weakness isn't always a problem. It's actually sometimes a positive as well. And the second slide of his that I thought also was quite interesting. And Obviously, the top two sentences or paragraphs have some kind of sense, or you can kind of take something from it. But from my perspective, the one sentence to me that actually rings true is the third sentence. So you become excellent because you're doing things that normal people do not want to do. Do you know the irony in any architectural practice? And I can tell you this experience I had last week, right, when I was down in Sydney visiting a practice and undertaking a review of their business. The key people that are really good at using the software are like, I don't want to be seen as the BIM expert. I don't want to be seen as the BIM expert because I just want to be the architect. So the irony of this is that if you're actually really bloody good at understanding these processes, you actually command more money in industry than the actual architects or engineers. But I definitely recommend you go and do some listening on YouTube to some of his presentations. The Freak Factor, you can actually pull his whole presentation. I think is a 30-minute keynote off there that I've been lucky enough to see him present. Now, the other key thing to think about, and I don't know how far you are into your career, how far you're into your university careers. What year's everyone in? First year, second year, third year. So you're 3 years in. Half of you look pretty young. You come straight from high school. Have you all heard this saying before? You might have heard it in high school. I know I was pretty lazy in high school. I didn't study at all in high school, but I was lucky. I got through. But luckiness doesn't work as much once you get out of high school. Once you get further into your career, you got to realize that if you actually fail to plan, you will plan to fail, and you won't be successful. Okay. Another saying I kind of want to talk about is how many people in the room love sport? Half of you? Everyone ever heard of the saying, the 1%ers? Or has everyone ever been involved in high-performing training and high-performing sporting teams, or even as an individual? What it comes down to, the person that gets to the Olympics, the person that wins the race, puts that extra bit of effort into their training. They put that extra effort in on the track, in the pool, on the road, right? So they're the people that actually are the ones that succeed in life. They're the ones that succeed from that sense, right? If you see all the other sides behind sport, it's ugly. You know, those guys put their body through so much pain and hell to get where they are. But what I'm getting at here is what got me to where I am today is if you look at the trajectory of those lines, okay? Now, the bottom dash line is assuming that you contribute or you put in your 37, 38 hours a week effort into your career. And that's the amount of knowledge that you'll gain in going through your career. Now, I'm kind of a little bit crazy, right? I kind of probably took the trajectory probably of the top line here, where I probably added about 7, maybe 10, 15 some weeks, extra study, extra knowledge, extra learning into my week on average. So over a 10-year period, you see yourself here 19% further ahead in your career than your compatriots in terms of experience and knowledge. Now, some of the things I've always said to people that I've had in my team when I worked with Fulton Trotter is don't do that to yourself, right? This 30 kilos I put on is because I did that. You know, I was 90 kilo Ironman triathlete back in 2011. So I completed an Ironman triathlon. 10 years on, working my ass off, lost that balance, pushed me too far to that side, but it got me where I am today. Now, one of the things I want to suggest to you is that if you want to be the one that gets employed over your peers, put in the extra 1% effort, okay? So you need to sit down one night a week and dedicate that one night a week to studying, learning about processes, learning about tools, becoming an expert. Maybe it might be something else you have to study, but just do something that contributes to your career progressing forward. It might be meditation one night a week. That actually might be what your body needs. So from my perspective, what makes a successful career? So there's 3 components I think that makes a successful career, okay? First of all, you cannot forget technical expertise. If you actually have no understanding of what it means to be an architect, an engineer, quantity surveyor, and other areas, you actually won't make it at all. But now the added complexity that we have within the industry and environment today, with all these new tools and technology and the way things are moving, and we're just getting some feedback, you need to have expertise in using a range of tools. Now, in the past, all it used to be was you used to have to be able to use pencils, pens, a couple of different set squares and adjustable set squares and fax machines and die line machines and all those lovely photocopiers and stuff like that. That today means nothing. Now it's emails, now it's Word documents, reports, all different things, and learning, a dozen different tools to be able to deliver BIM processes. So the tool expertise is something that's really critical. The final piece of the puzzle is about process expertise, right? Now, process expertise can be tied into your technical expertise as an architect, engineer, quantity surveyor, because you need to understand the processes to actually make something work. But over time, process transition is changing so frequently that you need to be on top of it all the time. You need to maintain awareness of what's going on around you. So that's the key things. That's the key formula for me to actually becoming successful. So who am I and what have I done? It's a bit of a long introduction. But architecturally, I've actually worked on over 70 projects over my 17-year career, delivering in aged care, education and community sectors. And the project value I've worked on is between, $50,000 to $100 million. And most of the time it's been traditionally procured. Sometimes been design and construct, but the majority of them have been traditionally procured. So we're following the project from start to finish, working with the client, understanding what's going on, learning skills of undertaking briefing, and then project management skills of keeping builders on site when they're going through. Because of my expertise in the extracurricular work I've been doing in my nights at home, I've had the opportunity to be invited and present at over 45 events across North America, Europe, and Australia, to the point where I've even been flying business class to Europe to present. So it's quite exciting and have those opportunities, and it ruins you for life because you can't afford to do it every week. But then also the other things I've done that's really important, and this is about investing back in industry and contributing back in industry and being aware of what's going on around you. So I am not the chair of BILT. I'm a committee member of BILT ANZ, and I've been involved with that for about 4 years now, I think 4 years. Brisbane, I've been involved with Brisbane for nearly 6 years, but I'm currently the chair of Brisbane and originally was the sponsorship manager. I'm chairing the ACA AIA BIM task force because I believe the architectural profession have their head in the sand and they actually need to be made aware of where industry is actually going. And then because of my strong beliefs in open BIM, and I'm not going to preach that to you tonight, I'm an active member with Building Smart Australasia. So that's kind of who I am. This year, another initiative I started was a podcast series because I recognise that a lot of the people that I'm trying to reach out to and communicate to about these topics are never actually at the conferences I get to speak at. So the people that I want to try and communicate this to are typically time poor people that are actually, working very hard in their day-to-day jobs. And I thought to myself, well, if I create a podcast that gives them an opportunity to listen to industry experts while they're on their commute to and from work or while they're at the gym. I don't want people to fall asleep on a treadmill though, or drop a weight in shock if I say something that's wrong. But one of the things I hate the most in industry is the sales pitch. I hate people selling stuff. And most people that are selling stuff are saying what they want you to hear because it suits their business model. It doesn't suit industry. So what I've got so far is we've released 13 podcasts. The next one will come out at midnight tonight, and then we'll have another 6 podcasts that come out to round out the series of 20 for this year. And then we'll start kick off with a new season next year. But it's well worth the listen. There's no BIM jargon in there, and it's actually set up in plain English specifically for clients, people that are actually representing clients to actually get assets delivered. I think the proudest thing I actually got was actually a BIM award. So it actually validated that I actually knew what I was doing. So I can take that away as being a positive, that I'm not just a fake. So I was really happy about actually getting that. And I think that to me was actually more exciting than actually winning a state architecture award. All right, we've rattled on for too long already on that, but let's move on to why BIM. And you know, I think the key factor about this point of the discussion is to kind of understand why you were doing this in the first place. It's not about just doing it for BIM's sake, okay? So BIM as a process was born due to the inefficiencies of industry. So if you ever look deep into productivity reports, if you get tired, if you can't sleep at night, you've got insomnia, these reports put you to sleep. But there's a lot of graphs that you see here and seeing the productivity, and depending upon the graph that you see, the graph will either slightly go on the decline or you'll see the graph kind of going flat, okay? Now, in some reports, you will see farming has overtaken construction in productivity gains over the last 20 years. Isn't that embarrassing for us as an industry? That's good for the farmers. Who hasn't seen the McLeamy curve before? No BIM presentations without McLeamy curve. So I'll just quickly talk through this. Basically, this is the duration of the project. So developing the pre-design. So this is brief development, concept design, sketch design, design development, contract documentation, procurement, contract administration, and operation, okay? So this is a traditional procurement process. The idea is that what you'll tend to see is a lot of the energies and efforts in traditional procurement with fees are all loaded into contract documentation. Now, the problem is that the cost of making changes to a design increases rapidly as the project duration goes on. And the ability to change the design is really easy early on, but then as you get further into the project, every change normally sets up a kind of a domino effect and you have to change more things. So the idea is that we want to move from doing majority of the work here and shift it back, okay? Because you want to try and get ahead of that crossover. So what we're trying to do is shift it all forward. Now that comes in the form of modeling and all that sort of stuff, and then being clearer to communicate information to clients so they can make decisions. Now the interesting approach also is then when you look at the information transfer process, okay? Now, how many people are actually working in real industry right now? A couple of people. All right. So what happens is a client will hand over a massive brief document, okay, at the briefing phase. So a consultant team, if they've been engaged to do design and documentation, they'll be given this massive brief. It'll be normally form parts of numerous documents. Now the challenge is, with regards to that, is the amount of information loss that occurs, or the time that you lose because you're having to spend time learning that document, reading it. Now I normally use another slide here where I talk about the concepts of a picture kind of makes 1,000 words. So if you're actually shown a model of what they expected, you can see in 3 dimensions kind of more clearly what the client's after, rather than a series of 1,000 words describing, you know, this desk right here in front of me. You'd understand exactly what it's going to be just by looking at it in 3D. But then if I wrote it in words, it's going to say, well, I've got a steel leg. It's got two uprights. The upright is positioned more to one end, and it becomes quite wordy. Whereas if it's just a picture, it becomes quite quick. So the idea is by using a model workflow, you're going to get a lot more, it's going to be a quicker transition across the phases and the different teams that actually have to deliver the project. Most people within industry, in the architectural profession, engineering profession, don't actually recognise the challenges that they place on contractors and subcontractors when they put a project out to tender. They've been spending months on end putting together a massive pile of documents, of drawings, and 400 or 500 page specifications saying this is how the building's going to be built. Then they give industry, the construction industry, 4 weeks to price it. And what happens once the tender's closed, they say, I didn't see that, I missed that, I missed this, I missed that. So you imagine being able to provide information in a format that's actually viewable and measurable. So models can be measurable. Or a person that could price up this room, they could see, for example, I've got to put, you know, what have we got here? Probably 250 square meters maybe of this insulation on the ceiling, right? Now, if I didn't have an elevation or a section to say what height that ceiling is, I just price that as if it could be a 2400 high ceiling and it'd be really cheap and efficient for me to install. But the challenges are, is that ceiling's actually about 3.64 meters high. I'm going to need a lot of scaffold to do that, right? Now a model, a person can go through the model and see that straight away and identify very, very quickly that that's how they need to price it. And then at handover, this is the most disgraceful part of our industry, is at handover, our clients get these massive foolscap folders full of A4 manuals, essentially containing all information of all of the products that have been installed in their project. A slightly more modern approach to this is where you'll actually be handed a PDF. Now the problem with the PDF is that normally the builders have gone and just scanned them, so they're not text searchable. So at the moment you either have massive paperweights, or you have digital waste or digital paperweights, because for a client to actually search for that information, it's never bookmarked in the PDF to find it. So you're actually struggling to actually find that information. So we're not helping our clients in any way. But the idea with BIM is actually handing over a database that is structured the way that they have asked for it. So therefore it becomes quite easy and searchable either for themselves using and my brain's gone dead, it's after 6 o'clock, a CAFM, computer assisted facilities management software, or something simple as actually just using Excel. Now, I don't believe as BIM as building information modeling. I actually look at it as better information management. And this slide I particularly tend to use as a chain link when I'm talking about open BIM processes, because you want all the processes to connect together. Now, the diagram I showed you before is also suitable for people that use closed BIM processes. Okay, so say for example, someone writes a brief in Word, it gets saved as a PDF, the design team get their hands on it, they build a model in Revit. And then it goes to construction. Then in construction, the structural steel guys are using Tekla. So they can't use the Revit model. They have to build the model again from scratch to get to work in Tekla. And then you go forward into facilities management, then they just hand over all that crap. So the idea is that you want to be able to adopt a process where everyone along the supply chain are working in a piece of software that can deliver an IFC output. But the key thing is it's about communicating better. I think I've already skipped that. Yeah, look at that. The key thing about BIM is actually about communicating information better, okay? So many people don't recognize, but when you sit down with your clients are not designers. Your clients most of the time, do not understand how to read drawings. Yet the nature of a human is to sit there in the room and nod their head and say, yeah, I understand what I'm getting. I understand that drawing you've just showed me. I know my bathroom's going to look like that. But they're just saying that because they're too embarrassed to admit that they actually don't understand the drawing that you're showing them. Whereas if you show them a model, they might understand. So, or actually, this is the interesting approach, right? So there are people that struggle to actually understand perspectives. So if you actually draw a perspective as a picture and put it up, there are some people who actually can't understand that drawing. Then, if you have a fly-through, there are also people that do not understand that. So then the next level obviously is virtual reality. And then there's some people that still don't get that. And it's just the way in which their brain is wired and the perception that they have and being able to interpret things. So the problem is most people in the construction industry are spatially aware. So it's actually really easy for us. And therefore, we don't think about the way in which other people communicate or understand communication. So we're automatically just talking and going, this is how it all works. So it's just imagine being, when you travel overseas into a country that speaks a different language, you automatically assume someone can speak the language or understand what you're saying. And that's exactly what it is. You got to find the way in which you can communicate the information in a methodology that the person that you're communicating it to can understand. Architects and engineers are not producing drawings for architects and engineers. They're producing drawings for builders. They're producing drawings for subcontractors that have to go on site and do that work. So you just got to think about the purpose of the information that you're creating. Now there's this document that NatSpec put out in 2011. It was updated in 2016. It's actually quite a good read. I created this circular diagram, I think last year, to try and explain to clients or break up the kind of idea of what these things were all about in terms of BIM uses. And what we have here is the BIM uses broken up into the life cycle of the delivery of an asset. Okay, so we have our planning, we have our design, construction, operation. Now, the problem is that what we have seen come out from clients in the past is I'll say, I'd like BIM, please. All right. Now, the problem is that clients don't need all of that. If they just say they want BIM and the team goes and tries to deliver all that, it's generating a lot of waste because most of the time it's just not what they need. So there's another article I wrote, which I think is on my LinkedIn account, about the concepts of BIM and the idea of that if you were to go onto, has anyone, who here has a Swiss Army knife? A few people. Did you buy the really thick one, the one that's just thick? Huh, pardon?
I got the big one and the small one.
You bought the big one and the small one?
Yeah.
Do you use half the tools on the big one? Or is it just waste?
Waste. I use the smaller one.
Yeah. So the big one you bought because you like the brand. It's like people that buy nice toys, right? But then the one that's actually useful is the one that had less. So essentially you bought waste. But it's a pretty thing to look at. But I'll tell you now, BIM isn't pretty to look at when it's just data, right? So the key thing to remember with that, and that's a really good example, I'm glad I picked you out of the crowd, it's good. If a client asks for all of it, majority of the time they're not going to need it. So you need to be an expert in going and drilling down to actually understand what they really want. And it's not about, I would like disaster planning. Tell us how you manage your asset. What happens on a day-to-day basis? Tell us about the problems that you have on the day-to-day running of your asset. And I might come here and be able to solve your problems. And our role in industry is to help solve clients' problems. It isn't about creating more for them. And telling around and selling them the big Swiss Army knife is a clear way in which we in industry can produce excess waste for clients. So the idea is you've got to brief with them really well to try and solve their problems. And in all honesty, try and get the leanest Swiss Army knife you can get them. And the key thing about this is a saying you'll hear a lot, and it's kind of almost like BIM bingo in here tonight. But the idea is that you have to begin with the end in mind. Now, there's another slide that I sometimes pull out, and it's really important to understand. Now, the expense of an asset is probably, I think, 2 or 3% over overall asset life cycle for design and documentation phase. Construction is about 20, 30%. But then the remaining 70, 80% is actually the operational phase of the asset. And that operational, and then the duration of each of those phases is also quite short. So you may be only designing and documenting that project for 12 months. You might be only building the project for 2 years, but you're going to be operating and maintaining that facility for 50 years. So clients need to be educated to understand what they're actually going to need to operate their facility rather than just going, I just want to get this thing built. Okay. So the idea is that clients should pick and choose what they actually need. Now, this is just an example. It's not the actual answer for all clients or even half the clients that you talk to. But what it is demonstrating, I guess, the concept that they should be picking and choosing what they do. Now, your journey. The people that aren't in the room have their head in the sand. Or maybe they actually have something on tonight. It's important. But what I want you to do is walk away from tonight and never put your head in the sand moving forward. It's important to understand that if you do so, you won't be the one that's successful in your career. So remembering this, a successful career path, right? So the 3 important points. The first thing is about your technical expertise. Second thing about your tool expertise. And then finally your process expertise, all right? So those 3 things are the critical things. It's not just going to be one of them. It has to be all 3. And those that are familiar with the teachings of time, quality, and cost and the fact that you can't have all 3, I'm sorry, you have to have all 3. So remember, to see where you want to sit on the line. Do you want to be the person where you're competing against other people for a job that sits on that dotted black line? Or do you want to be someone that actually is sitting higher above that line? Do you want to be the expert? Do you want to be the person that actually can command that job and win that job? Because the reality of it is if you're sitting on that dotted black line, you're just going to be someone that'll get picked up by an average practice. You won't have a practice of choice or a business of choice. It's only when you start elevating yourself, then you will be the one that has the opportunities to work for the organizations that you desire to work for. So your technical expertise, and now this is a really interesting thing, okay? I don't want to touch on this too much, but I think it's important to understand. So what makes up your technical expertise, all right? So the first thing is obviously university study. That's what you're here for, all right? I know sometimes there's days in your mind where you kind of say to yourself, why am I doing this? I don't see the practical value of this lesson, what I'm learning. The reality of it is that it's only after you leave university that you realize and recognize that what you were being taught was taught to you for a purpose. And the challenges that you have is that going straight out of high school into university, into a highly professional course, a lot of it doesn't seem relevant. It's only when you age, and I'm a bit older, you start to recognize and realize the importance of the subjects that you were learning. Okay, so don't underestimate the importance of that. Now, university doesn't give you real life project experience. It can kind of give you academic concepts of how things go together. None of the university projects that I ever designed could probably ever get built because I didn't really think about how things went together structurally. But the key thing about it is that real life project experience in practice will start to build your knowledge from technical. So this is all about the technical, guys. And then obviously being in practice. Now I can tell you right now, my greatest mentor that ever existed was a gentleman called Frank Moss, right? And he was a former partner of Fulton Trotter Architects. It was Fulton Trotter Moss at the time when he was part of the practice. He was 80 odd years of age by the time he left our practice, right? But the key thing about that is find a mentor within the organization that you're working with. Find a mentor in industry, right? Because practice and just sitting there, the other key thing in practice is don't sit in practice with your headphones in, right? I know it might be a distraction, but open plan offices as a junior staff member can be the best benefit to your career ever. Because you can sit there, you can listen to phone calls, you can listen to meetings, you pick up on conversations that people are having that have greater knowledge than you have currently right now that you can gain from. So my key thing is take those headphones out of your head. As much as I work better with music on, as a junior person, it's the most important thing that you can do because you will learn so much from it. So the other part of it is about your journey and it's about the process expertise, okay? Now, this ISO standard came out in November last year. I don't know whether through your QUT accessed SIO Global, you guys can get your hands on these standards. They're worthwhile getting your hands on and reading. So now BIM has a standardized process. And if you do read the BIM principles document that was released by government last year, you will see that they talk about utilizing these processes for the delivery of their projects, okay? The challenges with BIM is the amount of acronyms and terminology that comes with it. And that's just a kind of a cloud map that I came up with, or a word cloud that I came up with all of the catchphrases, all the terminology that are in it. But the key thing about this is it's all about requirements and informations, right, and assets. Now, the other thing I guess you got to think about is that in the past, clients just trusted industry to deliver information for asset management at the end of life. Now what we're trying to do is say to them, no, tell us what you actually need. So then it's actually prescriptive as to what they're wanting. So this whole standard is about a client documenting their information requirements or then their level of information need. This is the most exciting document of all. Who has seen this document? No one. Oh, good, fresh. Okay, so this document is a BIM knowledge and skills framework. Okay, now For anyone that's in the architectural profession, I can only talk on that side of the fence because I know about it. But there are the skills that you need to have to become an architect, a registered architect, that the Board of Architects actually have. And that document's pretty thick. It's got about 90 different skills that you need to have as an architect. And I'm assuming there'll be something similar that would occur for other industry professionals that want to get registered under their body. So I'm going to put up some slides. I'm not going to read the words out because I don't like reading directly off slides, but it gives you an opportunity to have a look at this slide and understand what this is actually about. All right, has everyone read that one? Speed readers here. So the key thing is that this document is to set up the skill sets that people in the industry need to perform BIM processes. Okay, this isn't about the tools, this is about BIM processes. Scary things now. So I love analysing things, I pull things apart. So there's 7 process groups that make up this BIM skills framework. It's broken down into 24 subgroups for a total of 135 skills. So for those that want to become a registered architect right now, you're probably looking at about, I don't know, maybe 200 different skills you've got to have. It's pretty exciting stuff. All right. So the stakeholder groups that are part of this document, okay, are at the client level, the designer level, and construction level. So right now, this framework does not have skill sets set out for manufacturing or facility asset management people. Okay, so the question is that I don't know whether it's coming in the future or not, but at this stage, this is what it covers. And I think everyone in this room sit in the second 2, yeah. So the levels of knowledge are at the strategic, managerial, and technical level. And once again, early in your career, it's all about the technical side of things, okay? But then as you grow through your career, you'll start to become more managerial and strategic. And then there's the different levels of knowledge, okay? So I want you to remember the 1 to 5 over on this side. So basically, basic knowledge as a 1, reasonable knowledge in the middle, but expert at number 5, all right? So they're the key numbers to kind of remember. So we're going to skip through the client one, but actually, no, I'll talk about this one just briefly, okay? But the key thing to be aware of is that even our clients need people within their team to have awareness, all right? So the level of skills, they need to be aware of 65 of those 135 skills, right? So 45% or 48%, sorry, this guy's 61, so 48%. And then you can see here the level of skill knowledge, so from a 1 to a 5, right? So even a BIM manager from a client's perspective, and this is an average, globalized average knowledge rate, if everyone was at 135 skills were at 5, right? So a BIM manager for a client needs to have a 33% overall knowledge. Procurement people and contract specialists, 37%, right? Because you can see here they're sitting at 17 as expert level compared to the 9. But they're probably, and maybe some people might take up project management roles at client level. They still need to have a level of 28%. So it's pretty scary. But if we go back and look at the standard, the key message there is the client needs to be educated enough to advise industry of what information they need. If they're not knowledgeable, like this here, if they actually don't have those skill sets, they actually won't be able to ask industry for those things. In the design sector, it's pretty scary. Even my business directors that are analog people that I used to work with, my business partners, how's that? They need to know 94 of those skills out of the 135. Most of them obviously sitting here at level 1, so they have to have a basic awareness. But you can see here throughout, they still have a 26% knowledge just for someone that runs an architectural practice or runs an engineering company. So let's look at the level you guys will start off at, right? And you'll start off at here as a modeler, and you've got to know at least 30%. which is quite scary, right? But you can see here, you're starting off reasonably low with 70 of those skills there. But you got to know 121 of them, 90% of those skills. Who's in construction? All right, you ready? You scared? I feel sorry for you guys. All 135 skills, yeah? So if you want to become a BIM manager for a construction side, you ideally need, your levels need to be at 85%. It's pretty scary, hey? Even estimators, someone that's just measuring a building needs to have 37% knowledge, but they need to know all 135 skills. And you can see here a project director needing to know 46% in construction, okay? So there's a long way to go. There's not really anyone that's implementing this right now. It's an area where I'm considering implementing some things, which I can talk about in a minute, but wanting to move forward, lots of study ahead. Talked about BIM creds before. I was the guinea pig for BIM creds. I had to do I actually was one of the first people to ever do these tests as a dry run to see whether it worked before they made it commercial. Thankfully, I passed. I was a bit worried because I would have lost all my credibility if I didn't actually pass them, but I actually passed all 3 of them. So I'll keep them for life, and so I actually did it. In terms of your journey, and we talked about your tool expertise, okay? Now there's a million tools in BIM. My recommendations for you are sit down, think about your career trajectory, where you need to be at the start and where you want to go into the future. And, you know, for the first 10, 15 years in your career, most of the time you're going to be doing the crap jobs, right? You're going to be doing the things that you don't particularly want to do as your overall career. But you will find yourself doing documentation, or you do, you know, measuring and stuff like that. The key thing is to understand the key tool, know what the key tool is that you need to know to perform your job in terms of your key role. Become an expert in that tool, know it back to front, right? Then take your blinkers off and become aware of the other tools that can assist. The most important thing is kind of being part of communities like this. You can, because there's so many people can have so many different experiences, right? So by going to events, you can hear people talking about all different types of tools, right? So I think there's a computational design presentation coming up where they'll be covering areas in here, and you go, well, what are these tools about, and how's that going to help my life? You know, for example, in our practice, when I was at Fulton Trotter, we didn't do much design that was computational design based, right? But we used Grino and Grasshopper to automatically place all the existing trees from a surveyor, right? So it's about understanding the tool, understanding what it's capable of, and how it can assist you to deliver the information you're required to deliver. In conclusion, I'm just going to keep harping on this, guys. Successful careers. It isn't about ass kissing either. It isn't about drinking beers with people, although that does work. Build your technical expertise. That's the foundation to all of this. If you're good at processes and good at tools, if you don't have the technical expertise, you're worthless. Because you could be really good at using a tool, but if you actually don't know what you're doing when you're using that tool, you'll create mistakes. You create mistakes, it creates risk, it creates liability, and business owners like myself get sued. You won't have a job for very long, all right? So technical expertise is the first thing that you need. It's like when people have job advertisements for Revit architects, I kind of fall over and go, that's not such a thing. Revit is a tool, right? You want to be employed as an architect or whatever you may be, and then that is a tool that they may wish you to be skilled at, right? So that type of advertisement for jobs really pisses me off every time I see it, because that's not a specific title. You're not that type of person. And if that's what they want to hire you for, then you're doomed for failure already, right? You're not going to be going there to be an architect. You're going to be there just to be a documentation CAD monkey. I won't use other words. Tool expertise, as I said in the last kind of slide, build your expertise in the tool that is critical to your role. And understand the process, right? BIM is not a tool. BIM is a process. BIM is about providing better information, more consistent information, the right information at the right time for clients when they need it. Since I left Fulton Trotter, I've been doing a bit of brainstorming about how I think I personally can contribute the best value to individuals in the industry. And one initiative I'm contemplating launching in October, or it might be later depending upon interest, is a BIM coaching scenario where people come to me to specifically get coached in line with the BIM skills framework so they can become experts. Because you can go to tool providers, you can go to software vendors to get software training, and go online to get software training. You go to university to learn about your technical expertise, but there's nowhere available right now that actually provides that. So it's a program I'm thinking of running as a 12-month thing. The cost might scare people, so that's where we're going to actually have a conversation with people that have interest. So come and have a chat to me, get my card, we'll have a chat and figure out what actually works, and then we'll find a way. Because the thing is, all it is my time, right? I'm selling my time. And we find a balance between what people can afford to pay, or we can get sponsors to pay, versus the time I can give you guys, all right? And I want to try and keep it, I don't want to have it so that I have 20 people and reduce the cost, because then you're not going to get the knowledge. It's about a small group of people, of 5 to 10 people, that become experts, knowing and basically connected to my brain for 12 months. All right? Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nathan.